Hello and welcome to the Brodie Blueprint, the podcast designed to help college students and young professionals navigate their career paths. Each episode we sit down with industry experts from finance, business, sports, education and more to uncover their journeys, daily experiences and lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're exploring career options, looking for networking advice, or just curious about different industries, this is the place for you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of the Brodie Blueprint. I am your host, Jack Brodie. Today I'm very excited to be bringing you this first episode. This podcast is something that I've been planning and working on for quite some time. As you can see, today it is just myself, so I'm going to be taking you through a little sort of meet the host episode. I thought this was a good opportunity for me to tell you a little bit more about myself, why I've started this podcast, what the listener can expect, and also a little bit why I think the podcast is worth a listen. Okay, so before we move on and crack on with a little bit more information about the podcast and a little information about me, I just want to put out a disclaimer about the quality of this podcast. With this being the first episode, obviously I am very excited about bringing it to you, but there is a lot of stuff that I don't know about podcasting just now. So this is going to be a kind of figure out as you go type situation. I want them to get better with every one that's released. So yeah, I want to put a disclaimer out that there could be video issues, there could be audio issues. It might even just sound a bit weird at times. This is quite a weird feeling for me just now. I do have quite a rough script down here, so if you see me looking down there a lot, I am just reading notes that I have because it does just feel weird sitting here talking to my phone and no one else. So without further ado, let's get into a little bit more about me and a little bit more about why I've started the podcast. So first of all, I'm currently a college student. I'm actually a junior studying accounting. And I've always been somebody who's been quite interested and curious about things. I've always kind of asked the question why about stuff, and that's sort of why I've got to this stage, really. I've always been curious about why people got to where they are, why they chose the path that they did, what they learned along the way. And I feel like a lot of people my age, a lot of people watching probably, I feel like we always kind of juggle the pressure to have it all figured out. I feel like we all think we should know what we want to do with our lives right now. And I think something I've come to learn just by talking to these people that have already established themselves in careers and other sort of mentor type figures is that a lot of people don't have don't have everything figured out. They don't have everything they want to do decided. I think it's also been quite common to hear of people that didn't find their dream careers until, maybe 10 years into their careers, something else. So I think one thing that I want to kind of stress throughout the podcast and stress to anyone watching, even if that is just a few people, that we don't have to have it all figured out just now and that we can learn it along the way. And I think that's something that's also going to be true with this podcast. I don't have all the editing stuff right just now. I don't have all the video and audio stuff right just now, but it is something that I feel like I can learn along the way and something that will improve over time. So what ended up finally getting me thinking more seriously about this podcast was that I kept finding myself having these great conversations with people that I met on LinkedIn, people that I met through networking, friends that I spoke to, and people that have landed these great internships, great jobs, that have already established great careers. And I always walked away from those conversations wondering, why isn't this information and stuff out there more widely available, widely accessible? I love LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot to talk to people, to kind of just network in general. But you could scroll through LinkedIn for ages and never actually find any information that could be tailored to what you're doing or more niche to what you're doing. So my first question to myself after all these conversations and discussions with people was why isn't it easier to get this information? The Brodie Blueprint, this idea, this podcast is kind of born from that question. Why isn't this stuff out there more? So I kind of want to create a space right here where we can kind of hear those stories live. I can obviously get them live in conversation. You guys can watch and get this knowledge and this information sort of unfiltered, uncut, and it's all real coming from someone that's in that industry already and coming from somebody that's already established in that area. So I think, this show really, who's it for? Well, it's for anyone that's trying to figure out what they want to do next. Whether you're a student like myself who's been trying to pick a major for the last couple of years, or even just pick something that they want to look into more deeply, that this is kind of the place for you. If you want to figure out what it is you're trying to do, please send in people that you want to see on the podcast. Please send in guests that you want to interview. I have actually spoke to some people. There is kind of 3 or 4 guests that have said they're willing to come on already. I will touch on that a little bit more, but now I'd like to go into a little bit what the podcast is going to run like, potential segments, potential stuff you as the viewer can expect. yeah, a little bit more about the layout of the podcast. So let's get into that next. The podcast, I want to try and release an episode either once weekly or once every 2 weeks, depending on how quickly I can get more guests involved. I think that's a good starting point to have. Once a week, I think, is quite a good goal. So the podcast episodes themselves, I want to have the guest on. I want to go through the guest story. So, from wherever they think it's going to be best to start, whether it's from college, what they were doing, studying in college, what their classwork was like, and what their experience in college was like, all the way through their entry-level positions, their work career they've had, and where they find themselves now. Then I'd also like to go in and talk a little bit more about a day or week in the life in that career. And most of these segments and questions that I'm posing just now, this is all from stuff that I'm interested in. Obviously, I am in this situation now where I'm in college and looking for jobs after and looking to network. So if there's any changes to this you guys think would be better, or any changes you think I should make, please just leave a comment. But this is all stuff that I've laid out that I think is important so far. So a day in the week in the life in the guest career, I think that could be interesting to get a real insight into what their jobs are actually going to be like. Third section, mistakes and lessons they've learned from their career path. Again, this could be any mistakes they made in college, all the way to mistakes they make every day now and things they're still learning now. 4, I would like to have like a quick fire question or some kind of Q&A segment where either if I have a list of questions for them, or if you guys have been able to send questions in as well, I'd like to have a segment where I can go through and talk to them about that, get some answers for questions you guys have. And then I think just finally for the episodes, I want to have a little final piece of advice for the listener. If the guests have something they've set aside that they can provide us with at the end, I think that would be a good way to finish off. So that's going to be like the structure to the episodes themselves. I think that's a good place to set up and start. So yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to come across as some kind of expert. Like I said, I am in the trenches with you guys right now. I am a college student who doesn't really know what they want to do, and someone who's still trying to learn about the career that they might want to work in. I am still building my network every day. Like I said, I'm active on LinkedIn. I try to be really active so I can connect with as many people as possible and try and find as many cool opportunities as possible. So I feel like, yeah, this podcast is another way to kind of share that journey. Like I said, not only are these conversations going to be for you guys to watch and learn from as well, but it also allows me to network and talk with more people, which is obviously going to be great for myself. Why I think the Brodie Blueprint is going to be different, why do I think you guys should listen to it? Well, that's obviously a good question. I think, we're not just going to talk about careers. It's not going to be purely job work, it's not going to be purely career talk. There's going to be a lot of different stuff about life, the real life journey that goes alongside these careers. I think it's an important avenue to look at. And I also think I want to try and build a community with this podcast, not only with the guests that come on, I want to build a community with the listeners. So, I want you guys to be involved with questions or ideas for guests that you guys think you might have. So yeah, that's truthfully why I think you should listen. I think I've set out a lot of other reasons why I should listen. I think it will be really, really valuable. I think every episode should be valuable. So yeah, talking more about guests we've got to come on. So like I said, I'm studying accounting. I know I want to work in accounting and finance. So 3 out of the first 4 guests that we have are all from the world of accounting or finance. We do want to have those episodes released in sort of the next couple of weeks, so that's exciting. We do have a podcast. We do have another guest so far who is currently his own podcaster, runs a podcast himself, is also a student at the school I study at. He's a really great guy and he's got some really great advice and stories as well. So I am really excited to get into the podcast and kind of get started. I think it's going to be valuable. I think it's going to be worth listening to. I don't think the episodes are ever going to be more than kind of an hour long. I think anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour is sort of perfect timing. So yeah, I think that overall probably gives a good and brief description of what the podcast is going to be. I hope you guys think it sounds worthwhile, and I hope you guys listen. Like I said, the first guest should hopefully be joining us in the next week or so that's exciting stuff. So yeah, I think that's all for me. This first episode, it's been fun filming. Like I said, stick with it. This first episode's not going to be perfect, but I am really excited to get going with this podcast and to get bringing you guys some actual valuable conversations and some valuable advice. Please do follow us on TikTok and on Instagram. Of course, on YouTube as well. I'm going to try and post the podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So look for us on all those 3 different places. Please find us on TikTok and Instagram. Leave comments, get involved. Please, the more involved you guys get, the easier and more exciting it is for me to do these episodes. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will speak to you with our first guest episode in the next couple of weeks. Take care, guys. Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were also able to gain some valuable insight into a potential career. Please head over to Instagram and TikTok and follow us. That's the Brodie Blueprint. And also don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. If you guys have any guests that you want to see on the podcast or any industries that you want to see guests appear from, please let us know. Until next time, guys. See you later.